chapter 38. It says this, "Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, 'Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge?'" Finally, after all of this, after chapter after chapter after chapter, of his buddies showing up and doing the smartest thing they ever did, which was just sit there silently for 7 days with Job, just being comforters. But then, no, after 7 days, they have to open their mouths and start, giving their perspectives. And after all of the loss that Job went through, imagine losing everything. Just imagine it. We think, I'm really going through a struggle, But compared to what? All of his crops, all of his animals, all of his wealth disappears overnight. His 7 sons and his 3 daughters. And then, who knows how long later, his health, to the point where he's right on the verge of dying for months, month after month after month. And all his 3 friends can do is look at him and accuse him and blame him. "Surely, Job, there must be some reason God's getting you like this. Surely, you've done something stupid. You've done something wrong. So repent, get back with God." And now finally, after all, 37 chapters of that, finally the Lord answers. Notice that, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. This is Yahweh. This is Jehovah God answering Job, and it's only the second time in the whole book that Jehovah is used. All the other times it's God Almighty, it's El Shaddai, it's El Elyon, God Most High. It's all of those, but here is the personal covenant-keeping God breaking in and seemingly talking audibly with Job. That would be an awesome experience in several ways, right? Other than being scared to death, and you're dying, and, all of this stuff's going on, And it says he speaks to him out of the whirlwind. There must be some kind of storm going on. Elihu in the last couple of chapters had talked about the storm rolling in and how it had lightning and how it had thunder and, all of this stuff in the whirlwind. And so there's some kind of storm going on, and the Lord uses that occasion to speak to Job. And God can speak to you and I in a human language. Every time God has spoken to me, and we've had some great conversations through the years, for the last couple of 3 weeks, he's been dealing with me, and I've been kind of, trying to meander my way through a few issues in my life. But he has made his part of the conversation perfectly clear to me. Perfectly clear. I get up every morning and read my Bible. And I just consider that God speaking to me. And then I pray. I consider that my part of the conversation. So I'm dealing with what he's told me. I'm giving stuff back to him. And through the years, we've managed to have conversations. Some of them very pointedly, like the last couple of weeks for me. And, the difference is here with Job, it's audible. In my heart, I know God's speaking to me through his word, through things he's laying on my heart, through, other things. So who is this who darkens counsel without knowledge? The scholars are all over the place. He's speaking to Job here. No, he's asking Job, who's this idiot that's talking right now, And it was Elihu, So, you draw your own conclusion who he's talking to. It's interesting that Elihu used these very words when he spoke to Job. Job, you've been speaking words without knowledge. And then God goes, Job, who's this guy who's speaking words without knowledge? I find that interesting. He says to Job, now prepare yourself like a man, and I will question you, and you shall answer me. Now, get this. God will not explain to Job why he put him in that We always go to God and you go, God, why? Why her? Or why this situation? Or why him? Or why'd you allow me to, we go there and ask why. God doesn't answer the why question. I don't know if you noticed that. All the way through the Bible, God never answers the why question. And he won't answer it here with Job. He will simply reveal who he is. It's going to be this revelation of the Lord that's going to shut Job up and go, so I was wrong, and it's going to shut the other guys up too. And he's going to do that by using somewhere between 70 and 77 questions. The scholars are all over the bat. I find it pretty easy just to walk through and it says, where were you? How did this happen? I find it pretty easy to count them, but scholars, they get really technical. Well, this is actually 2 questions. I don't care. He says, prepare yourself. In the King James, it's gird up yourself. Gird yourself up. And what that meant was take your robe and tuck it into your belt so you had like shorts on. So you were ready to run, or you were ready to fight, or get into the battle. You were ready to do this. And he says, go ahead and tuck your robe up, because we're about to go to war. I don't find that comforting. You've been kind of fighting against me. Let's bring it on. Let's do this. And all of them had basically said, if I was God, I'd be getting you for this. Or if I were God, I'd do this, or I'd change this. And Job had been guilty of that. If I was God, I'd just, be done with me and put me away and do all of that stuff. So God says, well, this is the if you were God quiz, or the if you were God test. You think you're God? Well, let's see how you deal with my daily responsibilities, or what God, does. So in verse 4 he says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Where were you? In the Hebrew, there's this thing in the language that says, it leads like this. Tell me, Job, surely you know. Surely you were there, right? When I laid the foundations of the earth? Let me hear it. You got all this wisdom. You got all this knowledge. You fully understand me. Notice the when I. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? No evolution. No Big Bang. None of that millions of years of God-guided evolution that a lot of Christians like to cling on to. Well, sure, they still had to take millions of years and eons and all of this stuff. God's going to point to some intricacies and wonders that he is responsible for. And God will use all of those natural things to say, if they're running, and the earth isn't colliding with the moon and isn't headed for the sun at some breakneck speed, and all those billions of galaxies and trillions of stars and all of that stuff seems to be in order. And then he gets more personal, down here on planet Earth, the birds are still working, and seed time and harvest time and all of this stuff. He says, if all that stuff's still working, Job, and I'm in control of that, why do you think you're outside of my control? You're outside of where I would have you be. It's a great lesson for everyone in this room. Because how many times have we gone, oh, my life is totally out of control, and it's just going crazy, and I can't control it, and I don't know what to do. And God would just say, let go and let me have it. Because I run the whole universe, and it works the way it's supposed to. The only thing in rebellion in all of creation? Mankind. Everything else, God says do this, and it does it. Immediately. Mankind, what do? I don't like the idea of that. That doesn't sound good to me. Why would I ever do that? why would you ever doubt me in regards to governing over your life when you see that I govern over all of creation? How big is your problem? Right? How big is your problem? Compare that to managing all of creation. Just compare it. Here you are, a little speck on a little speck in a vast universe, I remember reading a story of a famous pastor, and he gave this prayer. And this woman walked up to him and says, "Oh, I can't believe you prayed about such an insignificant little thing." She says, "I only take big prayers to God. My big issues to God." And the pastor just looked at her and goes, What could possibly be in your life that's big to God? Isn't that true? He says, verse 5, who determined its measurements? The earth, Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? Who decided what size the earth was going to be? Who decided? Were you the guy who drew out the blueprints, stretched the line upon it? You're the guy that drew it all out, made sure the measurements were right, made sure the gravitational pull between the earth and the sun and the moon and all of this stuff so nothing ran together and nothing got too far apart. You're the guy, surely you're the guy that did that, right, Job? To what were its foundations fastened? That's an interesting question about a ball of dirt hanging in space. What's it fastened to? How's it hooked there? You ever think about that? I don't know. Or who laid its cornerstone? How does this whole thing hold together, Job? Now, in regards to simplicity, the Earth and our solar system are way simpler than the simplest human cell you can find. Way simpler. But in regards to probability that everything just happened to flow out this way, we just happen to be right here, this close to the sun and this far from the moon and this part of the Milky Way galaxy, and there just happened to be this kind of gravitational pull, and you go through all of that stuff. It's amazingly complex because you got gravity and distance and sun and precise location and all of this stuff going up. It's, if you want to write this down, or just keep this number in your head, it's 1 to 1,000th of 1 to 1 trillionth chance that this would work out this way. Now, if you're one of those number guys, that's a minus 10 with 15 zeros behind it. That's absurdity. That's more than there are stars in the galaxy. What's the chance? Ridiculous that it just happened one. That is God's genius and design. Verse 7, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Now, the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, they're 4 places in the scripture. Here, Job chapter 1, verse 6, Job chapter 2, verse 3. This is the angelic realm. The other place they're mentioned is in Genesis chapter 6. And we're pretty sure who those are. The sons of God, the angelic creation. But the morning stars singing together has everybody kind of scratching their head. What are the morning stars? And most people think they're the angelic realm also. I don't know. I don't know anything about that. They're singing. They're letting out some noise. We have these things called radio telescopes now. And a radio telescope simply shows you something based on the radio noise coming from it, because every star radiates a frequency from it. And every star has a different frequency. Every star. It's kind of like snowflakes, right? They're all different. They're all over the place. But you can tell which one they are by listening to its sound, by its frequency. You can go, oh, that's this one. Oh, that's that one, you know? And we got a whole telescope set up to do that thing. And he basically saying, Job, this is God work. You know, this is what God does. He does things like that. Setting up, running a universe, you know, keeping everything in motion, right where it's supposed to be. It's design, it's genius, and you don't think I can take care of you. You think you're out of my control. You think something's happened to you that I haven't allowed, and that allowance wasn't on purpose, not to punish you, but to make you better. And I was listening to this guy today, and he says, you know, the only place on planet Earth where you will find full satisfaction and full joy and full benefit is absolutely surrendered to the Lord Jesus Christ. It's the only place. Because every other place, you know, you can be a Christian and kind of keeping God at a distance and still playing in the world, and you can be absolutely miserable. Oh, you're saved. But are you having a great time? Are you blessed? You know? No? Because the only place that really happens, you know, the closer you get to that spout where the blessings pour out, you know, it's like in the shower. If you stay on the far side of the shower from the shower head, you're not getting very wet. You know? If you really want to get wet, you go step under the shower head. Verse 8, or do you shut in the sea with doors when it bursts forth and issues from the womb? Interesting idea. Is he speaking about creation? The waters were like behind doors, and the doors opened and it came gushing out, or like giving birth, like, you know, the womb opened and out comes the ocean. And you know, Genesis 1:1, it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Is it speaking about that? Or is he talking about the flood? Think about that. Job, very familiar with the flood, seems to mention it a few times when they're talking about it. And you remember, it rained 40 days and 40 nights, but that just wasn't it. The great depths broke up, and the aquifers and stuff gushed their water onto the surface of the earth, and then it seems like the water canopy around the earth also collapsed. And, you know, is he talking about that? I don't have a clue. Either way, he's saying, this is what God does. You know, I'm kind of in control of that. I think it's interesting, you know, they burst forth, they issued forth, they came streaming out. When I made the clouds its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band, is this the hydro system, clouds, rain, or is this Genesis 1:6 again? Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. Thus God made the firmament, and it divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and so it was that way. You know, I don't know. Just interesting stuff. When I fixed my limit for it and set bars and doors, when I said, thus far you may come but no further, and here your proud waves must stop. Imagine talking to the ocean. Okay, water, I'm going to draw this line. That's your line. You can go there, you're great, but I'm setting limits. I put bars, I put doors, I put gates there, you know. And it's interesting. Just go back and look at ancient maps. Have the oceans moved? They haven't. Sure, you'll get a little localized flood every once in a while, sure enough. But what's it do? It recedes right back to its border, right back to its gate. Imagine just saying, water, ocean, Pacific Ocean, you have to stop at Long Beach. You can't go into Nevada. I know everybody wants California to fall off into the ocean, but guess where God set the limit? I don't know, Job, can you say to the ocean, hey, come up to here, but don't come any further? You ever been able to do that, Spence? You probably have that ability, right? Job, I can say to what ails you, you can go this far, but you can go no further. Do you remember how God started this whole thing? Satan sitting there going, oh man, you got him all hedged in, you got him all protected. If you just remove that hedge and let me in there, he'd curse God to your face. A guy will give everything he's got for everything he's got. And what does the Lord say? Behold, all that he has is in your power. Do not lay a hand on his person. Set a limit, right? And then the next battle comes. Oh, flesh for flesh. A man will give all that he has for his health. So you take his health away, God, and he'll curse you to your face. And what does God answer? Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. Limit. Limit again. Oh, it's not a fun limit for Job, but it's a limit, right? And he can go that far, and he can go no further. Verse 12. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place? Job, you're the guy who brings the sun up every day, right? You're the guy in charge of that. Every day, do you realize every day of the year the sun rises on a different place on the horizon? Every day of the year. It's a different place and it's a different time every day. Who's in charge of that? Job, apparently, according to God. Right? Verse 13, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth and the wicked be shaken out of it. I like this. That the light would take hold of the whole world. And when that light comes out, all the wicked people flee. They're like vampires. The sun starts to come up. Oh, it's killing me! And they run for their, mom's basement or whatever it is, Because, I think it's interesting that it actually accomplishes something by rising. It actually puts evil down when the sun comes out. Interesting. Verse 14, and it takes on form like a clay under a seal and stands like a garment. The earliest writings that humans have ever found are on clay cylinders. It's just a piece of clay that they turn, and then they write on this cylinder as it turns, and he says, that's kind of the way the sun works. It's like it's written out, and it goes back and forth. And as it rolls, more information, different information comes up. Does this thing. It's turning to a script every day. New place, new time. Wicked flee. From the wicked, their light is withheld, and their upraised arm is broken. I guess when you sleep past sunrise, you're wicked for yours. From the wicked, their light is withheld. The sunrise light. How many have ever been up to watch sunrise? Some of you guys, that's an everyday experience, right? And some of you guys, you can circle the days on the calendar. I got 3 of them this year. Woohoo! Have you entered the springs of the sea, or have you walked in search of the depths? This is something that only until the last century did we ever know that there are freshwater springs in the bottom of the ocean. Just water just gushing into the ocean. We always thought it just got refilled by the waters of the rivers running back into it. Isn't it interesting? A lot of those are those hot water ones. There's this big hot water pump down there, because it's coming right out of the lava or who knows what. It's this core of the earth, and this stuff's gushing into the ocean. And when it does that, it creates a oxygen zone. Lots of oxygen there. And when you find a place like that, the fish love to turn those places into car washes. Have you ever seen a fish car wash? The shark pulls in, rests. And then all these other little critters come over, other little fish, and they start cleaning the barnacles and the weird stuff off the fish. And when that one's done, it pulls out. And the next limo pulls in, a turtle or something. Get me, You realize that's all God's design? He did that on purpose, and you're sitting there thinking, we didn't even know about that. I mean, this planet's got to be like 6,000 years old if you're a guy like me. We didn't even know about that for 5,900 years. And yet it was working the whole time. See, God's interesting, I find. God designs all of that. We don't even know it. Or he says the depths. Or have you walked in search of the depths, the Mariana Trench? Over 6,000 feet deep. How far is a mile again? 5,200. It's way over a mile deep. That's a lot of water pressure down there. Have the gates of death been revealed to you? No, and I don't want to know anything about them either. Or have you seen the doors of the shadow of death? Job, you've been sitting at death's gate for months now. Have you discovered its doorways? Have you checked out its gates? I'm personally amazed at how fragile life is. I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a lay person. But I've been around some people dying, And it's interesting that, like with my boy Ryan, one thing in his body went wrong. One little thing. And it would not allow him to build red blood cells. And it killed him. It would have killed him in just a day and a half if he just let it run its course. Just a day and a half, boom, it's over. With some people, they have bad kidneys, a bad liver, Some people it's a sugar issue. Some people it's a lung issue. Some people it's a heart issue. One little thing off kilter, it's over. Isn't that crazy? How close we are to death's door. We're created so robustly. I mean, we are strong and lots of energy and we've got all this ability and talent and wisdom and all of this stuff, and yet one little thing. My wife's talking about her shoulder, and the doctor said that the shoulder is one of the strongest areas on the body, but it's also one of the most prone to get hurt. Well, you know why, right? Because it has such a wide range of motion. You got any other joint that will do this? Just name one. Any other joint that will do that with 100 pounds. And yet, you can beat somebody up playing football with it, fine. You can lay on it for hours, it's fine. But if you move it wrongly once, that stupid thing, now I can't move it. It's a pin to me, Interesting. This life thing. Where do I leave off? 18? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. Let me know if I'm going too fast for you, Job. Have you comprehended the earth? You realize it's like 8,000 miles in diameter, right? 24,000 miles plus in circumference. Job, you know all that, right? That's simple stuff. Where is the way to the dwelling of light. And darkness, where is its place? One of the interesting things about this verse is it says, where is the way of light? The way, it's on the move. It's a road, it's an action, something's going on there. We know light's alive, it moves. But where is the place? Because darkness is static. Darkness does not move. Modern science has been studying light for 200 plus years. And, first it was a ray, and then it was a particle, and then it was this, and then it was that, right? The only thing that affects darkness is light. But light is on the move. The average speed of light is 86,000 miles per second. Can you imagine moving that? 86,000 miles per second. That's fast, right? But light, we have discovered, modern science has they've looked through their telescopes and they're looking out there to the sun and they watch light go around the sun and it's actually curving. It's being drawn by gravity. And what that means is, as it bends around the sun, it means light is matter. And if that's true, then light is affected by time. We need matter to have time. If there's no matter, there's no time. It's not time to get matter. Now, here's what evolution does. After billions and billions and billions of years, matter comes into existence. No. That's taking time to make matter. No. It takes matter to make time. Matter had to be here first. Then you can have some time. But you can't do it the other way. And if that's true, then Genesis 1:1 is very simple. Because God creates out of nothing. And he plugs what he created into time. Because he's outside of time. He's not matter. God is a spirit. And those that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. God created outside of time, plugged it into time, In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I always look at chapter 1 as God, like you're going to build a barn. And on day 1 of the barn building, the truck backs up, beep, 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 and dumps off all the, there's all the matter. Okay, now we just have to put it together, right? Because he's going to say in verse 2, hey, it was empty and void and meaningless. It was all just jumbled together. Well, yeah, that's what the next 7 days is for, is to put everything together, right? That's the building process. But in the first verse, all the building materials showed up. So when the building materials showed up, time started. It's interesting. One of the first things God does is he separates the light from the darkness, right? But you realize the sun and the moon don't show up until like day 4. Wait a minute, where were they? They were separated, but where were they? And the crazy thoughts you could start going, wait a minute, where was he hiding light and darkness? So we know that God creates outside of time. We know that when you walk through the creation story, because there's a lot of people that want to say, well, God guided the evolutionary process and he kind of walks you through that. So he creates the plants one day. And then, let's say 1 million years later, he creates the next thing, which is the bugs and the birds and the bees and all of that stuff. Well, if the birds and the bees and the worms and all of that stuff weren't back here for the plants, 1 million years ago, the plants died because nothing pollinated them. Nothing took care of them. Nothing weeded the soil and did all the... Every day is contingent on the day before it and the day after it, every single day. He creates the plants, then he waits a day to create the sun and the moon and the stars. Oh, wait a minute. They would die without the sun. Plants have to have the sun. Oh, sorry, your evolutionary process falls apart here. We Christians aren't supposed to have an evolutionary process. We're supposed to believe in creation. End of story. So, there's my spiel. He's outside of time because he looks at Jeremiah and he says, hey, I knew you before you were formed in the womb. I knew you. I had information about you. I knew exactly how I was going to build it. It's like God says, I had the blueprint of you laying on my desk generations before I built you. Now, see, that makes perfect sense to me. Other people, they go, well, that can't be. How would he know what he was building? Well, I know what I'm building when I build something. I'm going to build a wall over here, and I know it's going to be 2x4s and, nails and stickers and, whatever it is. I'm going to do that. How come God can't know that about you? He does. He had information, because information is not based in time or in space. It's not a material. You can take one of them little flash drives from the store, nothing on it, and you can weigh it. And then you can bring it home and put the Library of Congress on it, right? And you can take it back to the same scale and weigh it, and it doesn't weigh anything. How come? Because information doesn't weigh anything. Information's outside of, matter, time, space, all of that stuff. So the speed of light thing that we grew up with is falling apart. Because all we have now, they're looking into various parts of the universe, and they're finding light moving at different speeds. And actually, they're saying the speed of light it's slowing down. Well, that's fun, right? Now it's only going to go 184,000 miles. It's a darn thing. I had to wait for it this morning. I turned it on. So Job, you're going through a storm. You're in a dark spot right now. You don't think I'm in charge of the light? You don't think I'm running to you don't think I understand all the intricacies? You don't think I know how everything works? He's talking about light. He's talking about darkness, that you may take it to its territory, that you may know the paths to its home. Do you know it because you were born there, or because the number of your days is great? Were you around then, Job? Did you get a handle on all this stuff when you grew up, as old as you are, old ancient Job? You got this down? Have you entered into the treasury of snow, or have you seen the treasuries of hell? Hail, not hell. It's the treasuries of hail. Let me get my pronunciation on here. Which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war. The treasuries of snow. You would think Idahoans would be experts on this, right? Because we get lots of experience. In an average snowfall, there is trillions of snowflakes. Trillions of them. And every one has 6 points and an absolutely perfect 60-degree angle on all 6 points. And every one is individual. You will never find two the same. And I think that's because they melt off and he can make a new batch out of the same molds next year. But, I don't know that for a fact. It's interesting. It's a 6-point star just like the Jewish 6-point star. Just a little thing to throw up there. There's beauty and there's quantity in snow, right? Hail. Now, the storehouses of hail that I've reserved for battle, think about this. This was written long before Joshua chapter 10. You guys remember the story of Joshua chapter 10. Joshua's in a battle for the promised land, and they're running out of time. They're running out of daylight, and Joshua looks up and he says, Lord, make the sun stand still. And the sun stood still for the length of almost another day. The moon stood still. Everything stopped on this day. And Joshua and the boys were taking it to these guys, And it says, as they got to this valley, the enemy went over this valley, and they're running to the valley. And the enemy in the valley, it says, God, the Lord, cast down large hailstones from heaven on them as far as Azekah. And they died. And there were more who died from the hailstones than from the children of Israel in battle. How would you like to be under God's gaze? He's got these large hailstones. You know, we're going to experience some of those in the last days, it says. But, you know, in the last days, in Revelation chapter 16, verse 21, it says God's going to send some hail on the planet as large as a talent. Now, is that a Greek talent or is that a Hebrew talent? Because a Greek talent, you know, or Hebrew, you know, it's either 96 pounds or it's 120 pounds. And I'm thinking if one of those bad boys comes flying out of the sky and connects with you, it ain't going to matter if it's 96. Oh, if it would have been a 96er, I'd have made it, you know? I don't think that's really going to matter. You know, Ezekiel 38 and 39 speak of a battle that's, I think, soon in coming, where there will be fire and blood and hail coming down. He's still got some storehouses of this, guys, you know. It's interesting that in Revelation, it says that the hail came because these men had blasphemed God. And you know what the Old Testament punishment for blasphemy was? Stoning. So God takes care of them there kind of that way. You know, it's told that Napoleon was fighting against Russia. And Napoleon was making all these accusations against Russia. Oh, we're coming and we're going to wipe you guys out. And Russia made this comment that, you know, it's all in God's hands and you can't do anything without his approval. And Napoleon kind of went, pfft. And Napoleon left there with 200,000 men frozen to death on the ground. Because he went at God, you know. Can God use the frozen stuff, ice and snow? I'm thinking so. He can fight your... Job, if I can do that with ice and snow, don't you think I can help you out? Don't you think I can show up for your battles? Verse 24, by what way is light diffused? You know, all the spectrums of light. Or the east wind scattered over the earth. Hey, tell me which way this is going to go. You know? Who had divided a channel for the overflowing water, or a path for the thunderbolt, to cause it to rain on a land where there was no one, a wilderness in which there was no man. Above ground, you know, the wadis, the old river channels, you know, where they get those flash floods and the water just flows to there and then flows out. And who designed all that stuff? Who got that all in place? Who put that all together? And underneath, the aquifers that suck in the water, that hold it in reserve, you know? Or the path of the thunderbolt. Isn't it interesting? The path of the thunderbolt. Our scientists are still trying to understand all of this stuff because dealing with lightning and thunder is a little dangerous. I don't know if you know. But it can be a little crazy. And so, you know, it's taken a while to figure that out. You know, there's thousands of tons of water vapor in the air. Little electrical activity goes on and it distills into raindrops and down it comes. The lightning bolt produces a leader before it goes anywhere. It will produce this like little line of electrons or something. And it will either start from a cloud down or from the ground up. They've caught it doing both. And once that little leader is attached, here comes the lightning. Well, a lightning bolt is really just 1 inch thick. How many of you watched it at night and it looks like it's huge? I mean, there's a big old bolt going over there and you're like, man, that thing was filling up the sky. It's 1 inch. It's just 1 inch, but it's so hot, you know, it's so bright that it looks huge. It travels at 90,000 miles an hour. I think that's why it's noisy, right? I think she's breaking the old sound barrier when she does that, you know? It's 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun. and it creates a space around it. It creates like a vacuum around it. Boom, here comes this electrical thing. Boom, and it leaves this gap, and then what you hear is the atmosphere collapsing into that gap again, filling that gap. In a fast-moving small storm, the electrical energy produces 10 million kilowatt hours of electricity. That's enough for your home for 2,000 years. Don't you wish you could just go out and plug into Mr. Electric? Let's save this up. Oh, where are you going to hold that? I don't know. I don't know what kind of battery system you got going on for that, And there are 2 million strikes a day on planet Earth. If we could just get that, we wouldn't be complaining about Rocky Mountain Power anymore. Go ahead and charge what you want. I got my own little secret system here, It's kind of unreliable. I get like 87 million volts all at once and then nothing, Verse 27, to satisfy the desolate waste, to cause to spring forth the growth of tender grass. He's talking about, I bring water, I bring rain on the desolate places. There's no guy there, there's no man there. Why would I cause it to rain? Because the weeds need watered too, There's some frog out there somewhere and he needs a drink. I'm taking care of all of that stuff. I'm blessing the land, I'm blessing the weeds, I'm blessing the wilderness, and you accuse me of not having you in mind. Think about that. Think about what God's saying through these questions. Has the rain a father, or who has begotten the drops of dew? Does the rain have a father? No, but you do. And when he says father like this, he's talking about creator. He's talking about, because we talk about, well, this guy's the father of, science. This guy's the father of economics. This guy's the father of, and we give them that title because they created a whole system. Well, guess what? The Old Testament called God Father because he created the whole system. They were nobody ever in the Old Testament went, Dad, help me. No, we got that from Jesus. In the New Testament, we get that relationship. John chapter 1, if you receive him, then he gives you the right to become a son and daughter of God. We're not born that way, but we get that way by receiving him. So he says, I created you. I created you in my likeness and in my image. You're the very purpose, you're the very crux of my creation. That's why all of this other stuff is here, is for you. And you think I'm not paying attention to you? Verse 29. From whose womb comes the ice and the frost of heaven? Who gives it birth? The waters harden like stone, and the surface of the deep is frozen. He says, I'm like a father to all this stuff. I've brought it all forth. God brings forth the frost, and we're not long before that's going to happen, and I'm kind of gloomy about that. When the water freezes over, the lakes, the ice fishermen can finally get out there. The penguins can finally be walking again. The seals and everything that uses the ice, the polar bears, all of that stuff. Do you realize how rare water is? Because if you freeze metal, it shrinks, gets more dense. We do that sometimes to get a good fitting. You'll have a fitting that's so close you'll heat one part and you'll cool another part and they'll slide right together. And then after they expand, they're stuck. They're just like welded there. Water expands when it freezes. That's unnatural. But when it freezes, it brings in air, brings in oxygen. That's why it floats. And you realize if it didn't float, penguins wouldn't have any place to walk. The ice road truckers wouldn't have a road to drive on. You know, we did the ice road truckers for a while, and we started calling it the bleep show, because every other word was bleep, 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 bleep. We're driving bleep, bleep, this truck, bleep, bleep, truck, bleep, bleep. You know, it's like, finally my wife's looking at me, you really watching this? Well, I want to see if he falls through. Nobody ever fell through. I'm kind of amazed about that. But it creates, on top, it creates an environment, and on the underside, it creates a perfect environment for what it's doing. We never think about those things. God says, hey, you ever thought about that? Under that big ice cap under there, you know, there's a place under it that's perfect. There's a place over it that's perfect. Just what I created it to be. Verse 31, this really gets ugly. Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades or loose the belt of Orion? Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season, or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? That's Arcturus, you know. It's interesting because it says God knows the names of all the stars. He knows all their names. You know, here he just lists 4 little clusters of stars. But the conservative estimate is there's over 100 billion stars. If you wrote out the names of 100 billion stars, it would take you 1 quadrillion pages of paper to do it. God just knows that. I can't even think of how big 1 quadrillion pages of paper would be. So, you know, I'm out of the group. Pleiades. Sometimes it's called the 7 sisters. Can you cause them to stay together? And he's talking about some kind of gravitational pull that they have with each other. Are you the guy that keeps the gravity right there? Are you the guy that put them just so they're not drawing together and just so they're not pulling apart? Are you that guy? You ever thought about our moon? Our moon. Here's this thing. It's 1/3 the size of our Earth, right? And it's stuck. It's really not stuck. It's moving slightly, but it's stuck in this place. If it was 100 miles closer to us, it would be on us. It would be in our gravitational pull, and it would be us. If it was 100 miles farther, and actually it's a lot closer than that, if it's just a matter of yards farther away, it would be gone out into the solar system. No, it's right where it is, and it's stuck there. Kind of like we are with the sun. You start thinking about all these things, you know. Oh, Job, you got that together, right? You know all about the gravitational pull of these guys, you know, these 7 sisters. Because, you know, I'd hate if it showed up and one day it was 9 sisters, or you know, 2 of them got lost and it was just 5 sisters now. You know, how would that work? Or Orion, you know, the hunter that chases Taurus through the sky, you know. Are you able to just loose its belt? Just those 3 stars right there in the middle. Are you able to just get rid of those? Well, no, you can't do that. Or Mazzaroth. Now, so many people want to take Mazzaroth and make it like our horoscope system. And it was never meant to be that way. It was never that way. The Mazzaroth is called the 12 signs, you know. Horoscope, astrological signs, you know. I have people ask me all the time, hey, what's your sign, Mark? And I say, stop. You know, that's my sign. The Mazzaroth is an astronomical structure that is ancient, that peoples throughout all of the history of the planet since writing began, they have noticed these 12 structures performing some kind of dance in the sky. Now, a lot of people think that the gospel is written out in the stars through these stars, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it ain't true. You know, I had a buddy that used to teach a class on it, and I never went to the class because I could care less. Did that come out wrong? Sorry. And, you know, God just asks Job, hey, can you keep these things in course? Can you keep the virgin doing this? And can you keep the other one doing that? And can you keep, you know? Or the Great Bear and her cubs, you know. It's the fourth brightest star in our galaxy. It's 80 times brighter than our sun. That's kind of bright. And it's 30 times larger than our sun. That's fair size, you know, little beast. And it moves at 70 miles per second. That's moving right along, you know. That's 42,000 miles an hour. That's kicking, you know. And he says, Job, you ever taken this star for a drive, you know? 42,000 miles an hour, just cruising down the old galaxy here, you know. Verse 33, do you know the ordinances of heaven, or can you set their dominion over the earth? This is a great one. Do you understand all the ordinances, all the principles, everything that happens up in the galaxy and how they affect planet Earth? Do you realize that we've discovered that all the other planets are out there, and the reason they're out there in exactly the place they're out there is because they are asteroid suckers. And when a bunch of asteroids comes through the galaxy, it hits all of them and doesn't hit us. Somehow perfectly, we're in the perfect place where all of those things just seem to sling right by. Oh, Mark, I've watched the TV shows. There's a big one coming. Good luck with that, you know? Job, do you have any idea how complex of system this is? And you think I'm out of control with your life. You don't think I have a handle on this. You don't think I'm capable of running your issues, your problem. You don't think I've set the limits. You don't think I know exactly where it's headed. You don't think I've calculated out everything that's going to happen. Can you lift up your voice to the clouds and an abundance of water cover you? I was thinking about the old Indian movies Native American movies where they would, where they would do the rain dances, you know, and they're out there, you know, have you ever just been able to walk out and go, Lord, we need an inch of rain, an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter today, okay? And done it? Have you ever done that? You ever talked to clouds like that? It's like, now. I've never been able to do that. Can you send out lightning that they may go and say to you, here we are? Have you ever commanded the lightning, Lord, I want Manny to be struck with lightning right now? You know? I mean, have you ever been able to just do that? I know Tyra's tried a couple of times, you know, but I think it's interesting, you know. Can you see what God's doing by asking these questions? I'm in control of all of this. I do this every day. I run this whole system. And yet, all of that system is set up for you. For you. You know, when God created a peach tree, a Georgia peach tree, he didn't go, man, because I like me some peaches. No, because he went, man, when Adam tastes this peach, it's just going to blow him away, right? When God created Hershey's chocolate or Lay's potato chips, you know, and, you know, freakishly weird that way, but, you know, all of this takes intelligent design, brilliant, genius level design and keeping. And it's beyond our understanding, most of it. Some just want to sweep this under the rug called evolution. Let's just sweep all of these intricacies and all of this seeming design and everything under this rug, and we'll just call it evolution. It just happened by chance over billions of years, you know. Let's just do that. But any scientist at the research level, any seeker at the research level where they're eyes in the thing, looking at what they're seeing today, knows there is a digital code in your DNA. Not an analog code, but a digital code. What that means is it was typed in there. It was planted in there by the designer. There's no such thing as blind chance, you know? And now they've discovered a thing called epigenome, a genome that's above the DNA that will turn parts of your DNA on and off for certain functions to do certain things. And that makes it way more complicated than we ever imagined it. I mean, we thought it was super complicated when we found that double helix, DNA thing. It's like, wow, look at this, it's so amazing. And now we found, just add that complexity by, a million or something. When Darwin looked in his microscope, he saw a gray blob, right, with little hairs hanging out of it. He saw this little gray blob and he goes, oh, that's just a simple little gray cell. If Darwin looked in a microscope today, he would throw his silly little simple ideas out the window, because there is no such thing as simple in God's design. The atomic structure. If you have a nucleus of an atom sitting here the size of a basketball, this big, the nearest electron is in New York City. The nearest electron circling this thing. And this one's negative and that one's positive. They should be repelling each other, and yet they hang together. How's that work, And we always went to, well, it's atomic glue. They have this scientific name for it. They've moved beyond that now, but they still can't figure out what keeps that little tiny particle circling this thing. And you understand that when you look at something, you're looking at mostly air, right? Because if on the atomic level, you got a basketball here and the electron is New York City, that's a lot of air. That's a lot of space, right? So this looks solid, doesn't it? It looks solid. You realize it's mostly space. It's weird. Weird. We know what holds them together. It wasn't atomic glue, right? Colossians 1:17. Christ, he is before all things, and in him all things consist. All things are held together. He's the one holding it all together. And then, you read 2 Peter, and it says one day he's going to let go. Everything's going to melt with fire. You ever seen us split an atom? We call it an atom bomb. Few atoms, and there's this big explosion, fire, and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, imagine when God lets go, when Jesus lets go of creation. Yeah, there's going to be a little fire, So the lesson for Job through this, and the lesson for us through this, is your life really out of control? Or do you just not like where you are? I get it. I get it. Is there purpose for your pain? Is there purpose for your struggle? Is there purpose for your loss? And understand this, God loved Job, right? He's his guy. There's nobody on planet Earth like this guy right now. But understand that. You're a Christian. You're now his son and daughter. Job could never say that. He loves you so much he can't take his eyes off of you. And you're thinking, yeah, but what about this? Man, this is painful. I don't like going through this. This is hard. Why has my life got to be like this? Instead of simply surrendering and say, God, if this is what you want me to be and where you want me to be and what you want me to do, then let's go do that, because this is only for 60, 70, 80 years. I don't care. Because after that, man, I'm in eternity and there's nothing but blessing and glory. Now, when you're going through a struggle, you don't want to hear that, right? It's taken me, 18 years to get to that way with my brain, with my issues. And they're just little issues. I can still walk, talk, and chew gum. I'm doing okay. But yeah, it has its issues. Your life is going to have issues. Do you want to be in control of those? Or do you want this God, who's in control of all of this stuff, in control of it? So trust him with your struggle. Trust him with the pain. Trust him with the disappointment, because he is trustworthy. Right? Read ahead. There's some great things coming up in the chapters. Lord, I just want to thank you for your word. Lord, I don't know anybody who isn't in a place where they need to hear what's in these final chapters, because we all struggle. We struggle with so many things. And God, I pray for those who are just in the midst of it, whether it's the loss or the suffering of some kind of condition, or the financial, or the mental, or the physical. Lord, I pray, God, that you would reach out and touch and let them know, not the why that you have them there, but reveal the who that has them there. And the who overcomes it all, because we find you trustworthy. We find you worthy. And Lord, we ask you to, Lord, walk us through day by day, month by month, sometimes year by year. And let us learn to fix our eyes upon Jesus and not upon the storms, not upon the rain or the wind or the conditions. Lord, grant us that favor. Bless us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.